Okay, today we're going to talk about this is chapter 12, morality, religion, and justice. And of course, this is one of my favorite chapters, probably your least favorite chapter, but who cares? I get to have a good time. Okay, so let's go ahead. I have no idea why I picked this one. It's a Greek island somewhere. Ethnocentrism leads people to assume that their own culture's ways are better or more natural than that of others. Ethnocentrism allowed Europeans to force their understanding of morality, religion, and justice on all the indigenous people they came across, all in the name of their definition of civilization. And of course, this was pretty ugly, um, especially among the Spanish. Uh, it was just not a happy time. They rationalized all their behavior because they were Christians and nobody else was. Uh, their brand of Catholicism. This is a picture. That's the English flag, but this is and it wasn't that much different between Protestants and Catholics, French and the English and the Dutch. Everybody was pretty ugly about dealing with indigenous peoples. 1971, Lawrence Kohlberg developed his stages of moral development. Level 1 was the pre-conventional level, level 2 was a conventional level, and level 3 was the post-conventional level, and that's Lawrence Kohlberg right there. The preconventional moral reasoning suggests that people interpret morality based on a calculation of how much better or worse off they would be for acting in a certain way. Morality at this level is about trying to behave in a way that provides the best overall return for you. Should I steal the cookie? I'm hungry. Maybe I should eat the whole bowl. Preconventional level. What's best for me? Uh, Level 2, conventional moral reasoning is about viewing actions as moral to the extent they help maintain and facilitate the social order. This level dictates that morality is about following the rules, and individuals should not question where those rules come from. In other words, you follow the rules because they are the rules, and they come from tradition or they come from uh, some magic place like the Constitution, and we should always do what we are told to do. That's level 2. Level 3 is a post-conventional level. Post-conventional moral reasoning is based on the consideration of abstract ethical principles of what is right and wrong, and moral decisions are reached based on the logical extensions of these principles. So right and wrong, and of course this was a question that came up in the Vietnam War. Was it moral to do the things that we did during the Vietnam War? Um, they had a trial where um, a a unit was sent in to neutralize a village, and neutralize at that point meant to kill everybody in the village. And so they were doing that. That this unit went in there to kill everybody, including all the children. And someone who wasn't part of that command structure landed during a medical helicopter landed to pick up somebody that had gotten wounded during this fight. And when they saw what was going on, they forced them to stop because he was a higher ranking individual than the individual on the ground. So they stopped, and that became the My Lai incident. And so when the lieutenant that was in charge of the unit that was performing genocide, when the lieutenant was put on trial, he was told that if a lawful order is immoral, then he had a moral obligation not to follow that rule. And of course, this is very confusing as far as military people are concerned. Normally, military people do whatever they're told. But the post-conventional morality, level 3, they claimed that he should have done what was right. He should have been able to judge what was right and what was wrong. The same thing came up with the impeachment trial, the first impeachment trial of Donald Trump. Um, One of the individuals that informed people that Donald Trump had done this immoral thing was a military officer who said when he heard Donald Trump try uh, to blackmail the Ukrainian minister into giving him negative information on Joe Biden, he knew that that was morally wrong and that he needed to say something about it. And of course, Donald Trump was not impeached, or he survived his impeachment. He stayed in office, of course, and that military officer was dismissed. He had to retire. So did he do the right thing or did he not do the right thing? That's the question. And of course, that has to do with post-conventional morality. So these kinds of things are going on all the time. People have to decide whether it's right and wrong, right or wrong in their own minds. This is a picture, of course, of a group of kids, group of teenagers. She's got a Budweiser in her hand. She has to decide whether to drink the Budweiser and be part of the group, whether it's right for an underage person to drink or not. And that's the moral dilemma that she's in right now. Good behavior is seen as that which is consistent with a set of universal ethical principles that emphasize justice and individual rights. Now, when we're talking about individual rights, of course, what we're talking about are individualistic countries like the United States or France. We're not talking about collectivist countries like China and Korea or Japan. So, this all has to do with who you are and how you were raised in the society that you live in. Snary in 1985 did a meta-analysis of the 27 cultural areas around the world that had been tested using Kohlberg's parameters. There was some universality in moral reasoning. In all cultures, there were some adults who reasoned at the conventional levels, and in no cultural groups did the average adult reason at the pre-conventional level. And the pre-conventional level is what is good for me. The conventional level is what is good for society, and the post-conventional level is what is right and what is wrong. And there was no one that operated at the pre-conventional level, but there were some that operated at the conventional level. In other words, what is right for society. Evidence of post-conventional moral reasoning was not universally found. Moral reasoning based on justice and individual rights. Every urban Western sample contained at least some individuals who showed reasoning based on justice and individual rights. Not a single person from the traditional tribal and village folk populations showed such reasoning. They did things because it was right for their group. Now, this is really kind of interesting because we seem to be going through the same moral dilemma right now in the United States. The insurrection on January 6th was, what happens next is the question. And the argument seems to be what is right for society or what is morally right, what is justice, what is right for the individual. They're arguing about this as far as vaccinations are concerned. Some people are saying that they're not going to get vaccinated because their individual rights allows them not to do this. But the conventional morality tells you that this is the best for society. So and the strange part is the people who argue one way as far as vaccination are concerned may be arguing in pre-conventional ways with another argument, and it seems to just flip-flop back and forth, and that seems to be the conflict going on between Democrats and Republicans right now. Sometimes the Democrats take the high moral road, and sometimes the The Republicans do. So it gets really kind of strange. One reason for the discrepancy between traditional societies and more urbane Western societies may be because of the educational experiences of both societies. Traditional educational practices may not include the same ideas of justice and individual rights. And you can imagine if you were never taught that in school. And this is a huge argument right now because the question is, should we be teaching people civics? Civics tells us what we're supposed to do in society. It tells us what happens, what a political system looks like. And the argument is, well, you don't have a right to tell us what the political system is because the political system is what I say it is. So there are some states like Texas that won't allow you to teach civics. There's an argument about history. What history are we going to teach? Is it going to be history that talks about slavery, or is it going to be history that kind of ignores slavery and refers to them as servants, which has been going on in the South for an extended length of time? And this is a huge argument, and this is something that the Supreme Court, which is very conservative at this point, is going to have to deal with. Abortion. Do people have abortion rights? Well, that's an individual right, but it's a conservative court, so will they overturn abortion rights of individuals? And that's going to be an interesting argument. We'll see what happens. Another explanation for the discrepancies between traditional and Western cultures is that the two types of cultures live in different environments. Because of the harsher environment, tribal and village populations have more concerns than justice and individual rights. They have a lot more to think about than whether somebody is being treated fairly or not. Like survival has to do with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The higher you are on the pyramid, the more you can think of these things, the individual rights and justice. And the lower you live on the pyramid, the more justice and individual rights don't mean anything because you need to survive, you need to be safe. Schrader and colleagues in 1977 argued that Kohlberg's model of moral reasoning only represented one of the three codes that people use for moral judgments around the world: ethics of autonomy, ethics of community, and ethics of divinity were the other three. Schrader and his group referred to Kohlberg's model as an ethic of autonomy. The ethic views morality in terms of individual freedom and individual violations. An act is seen as immoral under the ethic of autonomy when it directly hurts another person or infringes on another's rights and freedoms as an individual. A second code of ethics that Schrader and colleagues proposes is an ethic of community, which emphasizes that individuals have duties that conform with their roles in a community or social hierarchy. According to this code, there is an ethical principle to uphold: one's interpersonal duties and obligations toward others. Actions are seen as wrong when individuals fail to perform their duties. The third code of that Schrader and colleagues suggested was an ethic of divinity, which is concerned with sanctity and the perceived natural order of things. This code contains the ethical principle that one is obligated to preserve the standards mandated by a transcendent authority. Actions are seen as immoral if they cause impurity or degradation to oneself or others, or if one shows any disrespect for God or God's creations. Wow. Okay. Well, let's get into some more of this ethics stuff. German sociologist Ferdinand Tönnies argued that there are two ways that people can relate to each other in a group: Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. Those are two German words. Gemeinschaft is community relationships that bind people together with the social glue of concord, Gemeinschaft. Gesellschaft, people act as individuals and have weak binds with society. So the Mineshaft is people that are bound to each other by their community, and Gesellschaft is people that are individual and are not really bound to community. Which you might say that I'm Gesellschaft because I was raised in Indiana and I moved all over the world. And now I live in Iowa, and I really don't feel any connection to the society that I live, where I live. I also don't feel that close to, I teach, and I've taught in Clinton, Iowa. I've taught in Harlem, Montana. I've taught in Columbus, Mississippi. I've taught in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Where else have I taught? In Texas, in Wichita Falls, Texas. I've taught all over the place. So I really don't feel that close to my students. Well, I do always feel close to my students, but not to the community that they belong to. Gemeinschaft groups are characteristic of small folk group organizations, and within these groups, interpersonal relationships play an especially important role. People feel connected to one another because they feel a unity of spirit. The relationships are central to an individual's identity. Obligations associated with one's Gemeinschaft carry weight of full moral obligations. So that's Gemeinschaft. That is feeling close to your community. Gesellschaft are groups that are characteristic of modern Western societies and treat relationships as imaginary, instrumental, as a means to an end. Gesellschaft groups are perceived as relatively impersonal and somewhat contractual, which leads to the necessity of justice obligations to govern disputes between individuals. In Gesellschaft groups, individuals can't be expected always to behave in pro-social ways toward others because they have strong obligations toward them. So formalized rules are necessary to keep people in line. That's why we have laws. We have laws because we have lots of laws, and that's because we live in a Gesellschaft situation. And everybody does whatever they want to do, and it's the laws that keep us from doing things we shouldn't be doing. People the world over feel, but if you're in a Gemeinschaft, you do it because it's part of society. And if you don't do things the way you're supposed to do it, the whole society will collapse. But Gesellschaft, they're more worried about themselves than they are about the people around them, and that's why they need laws to tell them to stop at stop signs and to not drive too much over the speed limit. They need those laws to control them and to keep them from hurting other people, from infringing on the rights of other people. People the world over feel a moral obligation to their community. Objective obligations, people believe that they have an obligation to act in a certain way, even if there is no official rule or law that requires them to do so. Legitimately regulated, people should be prevented from engaging in a moral violation, or they should be punished if they act in such a way. And of course, there's a lot of different laws that we have that demonstrate this. Can we take off all of our clothes and walk down the middle of the street? And the answer is no. What does it hurt? What it hurts is the society. In some societies, this happens not all that infrequently. If you go to Germany and it's Thursday night and you go to the Schwimmbad, that's the public swimming area, it's nude swimming. If you go into a sauna in Germany, all saunas are nude, okay, but that doesn't happen in the United States. We have select areas or select places from time to time that may have nude swimming, but if you go to the swimming pool, the public swimming pool, on Thursday nights, everybody's still going to have a bathing suit on. If you go into the sauna, everybody is expected to wear clothes. But that's not the way it is in Germany. In Japan, They have public baths, and in the public baths, people get into the bath naked, and these are huge public baths, and so you've got all these people wandering around. Most of them are co-ed. You've got whole families there, mom, dad, and all the kids are there, and they're all naked. I mean, it's just the way it is, and nobody thinks anything about it. The only thing you do is cover up your genitalia as you get out of the pool. But other than that, everybody's just swimming around. And of course, Americans can go there and they just find it the funniest thing in the world because here are all these naked Japanese people just swimming around, not looking at each other or not thinking about each other. It's really kind of interesting. Ethic of divinity involves a moral code respecting the sanctity of the natural order of things as dictated by a transcendent moral authority. Immoral actions are perceived to violate the natural order of things. This gets really kind of confusing because there more and more in the United States there people are not do not adhere to a religious idea. So whereas back in the 1950s and 1960s, this was a lot stronger. Today, not so much, not nearly as strong as it used to be. The ethic of divinity. And when did Schrader and his colleagues come up with this? When did they do that? Oh, 1977. So probably in 1977, things were loosening in society because they had the hippie movement in the United States. So Schrader was probably talking about all the old laws and all the laws that people were trying to pass at that point all had to do with moral equivalence, had to do with higher powers. That was 50 years ago, and things, well, not quite. It's 43 years ago. Yeah, 43 years ago. Things have loosened up a lot since then. There are a lot of people that don't believe in a higher that there are any gods or anything. Hunter in 1991 proposed that a culture war exists in the United States and that the battle lines are drawn between those who have an impulse toward orthodoxy and those who have an impulse toward progressivism. Now, we see this right now in Congress because the Republicans are more orthodox, and they were the ones that were they are more orthodox, and then the Democrats tend to be more progressive. So we can divide it along party lines. The Republicans are the Orthodox Party, and the Democrats are the Progressive Party. As a matter of fact, that's one of the definitions of conservative and liberal. Is one is conservative is more orthodox, and liberal is more progressive. Religious adherents who are orthodox are committed to the idea of a transcendent authority. This authority is viewed to have existed long before humans and as operating independently of people. This authority is believed to be more knowledgeable and more powerful than all of human experience. In the Orthodox view, this transcendent authority created a moral code and revealed it to human beings in sacred texts. The moral code is perceived to stand across all times and circumstances and should not be altered to accommodate any social changes or individual differences. Individuals and society are expected to adapt themselves to this ordained moral code. And this is what the Quran is, this is what the Bible is. This is what what else do we have? Bhagavad Gita for the Hindu religion. These are old texts. These are texts that were written by these divine beings, and this is the code that theoretically we're supposed to go by. The Church of Latter-day Saints has the Book of Mormon was written as a higher moral code that people were supposed to follow. Adherents of progressive religions. I was just reading something. What was I reading? Oh, the Yazidis. The Yazidis are kind of a cross between Muslims and Zoroastrians, and there was a prophet that came along, and he's the one that wrote down all of their ideas, their moral ideas. Now, the reality is that there is very little difference between these religious people and the Muslims and the Zoroastrians and the Christians and the Hindus. I mean, there's very little difference. But because they are different, the ISIS decided that they needed to exterminate them all. So they tried to do that. They live in northern Iraq and northern Syria. They live in southern Turkey. That's where the Yazidis live. Actually, there's a fairly large population in the United States of Yazidis. Anyway, the ISIS tried to wipe them out, and the Kurds went in and saved them, or saved the ones that were there. This was back in 2015, 2016. It was the Kurds that saved the Yazidis, which was kind of interesting because the Yazidis thought that the Kurds were their biggest enemies, and here they're the ones that saved them from ISIS. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know if that's important to you or not. Okay. Adherents of progressive religions emphasize the importance of human agency and understanding and formulating a moral code. What were we talking about? We're talking about orthodoxy. Yeah. So Orthodox view think that we have to always follow. This is strict following of the religious text. That's Orthodox. The adherents of progressive religions emphasize the importance of human agency and understanding and formulating a moral code. Progressivists reject the view that a transcendent authority reveals itself in its will to humans. They believe that humans play an integral role in the formulation of moral codes because they were all written that way. There's the Zoroastrians. There you go. Krishna, Abraham, Krishna, Moses, Zoroaster, Buddha. These are all the religious people that have been out there. The Baha'i faith this is the Bab. Yeah, Muhammad, Christ, Buddha. Anyway, progressivists believe that because social circumstances change, the moral code must change along with them. Okay. 2007, Haight and Graham, and this is Haight, and this is Graham, expanded Schwader's 3 moral ethics by expanding it to 5. Avoid harm, protect fairness, be loyal to your in-group, respect hierarchy, and achieve purity. Avoid harm. People are sensitive to any behaviors that cause harm to others. Protect fairness. They attend closely to whether resources or rights are distributed in a fair way. And loyalty to their in-group. People are motivated to identify with their in-groups, make sacrifices for their in-groups, and trust in-group members more than they trust out-group members. And of course, that's kind of what's going on in the United States. If you belong to a political party, and I do, but I'm surrounded by people of the opposite party. So when I put out a placard in my front yard, somebody came by, somebody from the other party came by and tore it up. I'm sure it wasn't somebody from my party who tore it up. That wouldn't make any sense. Why would they destroy my placard? Anyway, so I kept putting it back up. They kept tearing it down, and they threw it in the field, and they threw it in the water, and they tried to tear it up, but it's made out of plastic, so you can't do anything. And every time they did, I just put it right back up. Anyway, so you have to be more loyal to your group than the other group, and you need to see them as the out group. One of the things that's happened around here is that we buy propane, we buy, we need this, we need that, and we go to the local community, and a lot of times they won't give it to us. They won't sell us what we need. They just delivered propane. They were supposed to deliver propane. They just delivered propane a couple minutes ago, as a matter of fact. But they were supposed to deliver propane to us back in August. And here it is, it's almost November. And we're just now getting our propane. Why is that? Well, could it have to do with politics? Well, they had lots of propane back then. Uh, they just didn't deliver it to us. I don't know. They kept losing our they kept losing our order. But every month, my wife would call them and say, "We didn't get any propane this month." We were okay. We didn't use that much air conditioning. We don't really cool our houses that much, and it just started getting cold here, so we were okay. But they filled us up for the winter. I guess we'll be okay. I hope we'll be okay. Respect hierarchy. People tend to respect hierarchy by admiring their superiors and believing subordinates need to act in accordance with the wishes of authority figures. Achieve purity, reflecting the ethic of divinity. People are motivated to achieve purity and are disgusted at behaviors ruled by the carnal passions, such as lust or gluttony, or by behaviors that suggest contamination of any kind. And that's according to Graham and Haight. Haight and Graham. There's a greater emphasis on faith in Christianity, especially Protestantism, than in Judaism. Membership in Judaism is defined by descent. Traditionally, one becomes Jewish by being born to a Jewish biological mother. So if I married a Jewish woman and we had a child, I am not Jewish. But our children would be Jewish because their mother was Jewish. But if I were Jewish and I married a what do they call them? Goyim, that's a non-Jewish person. If I married a goy and we had a child, the child would not be Jewish because despite the fact that I'm Jewish, I may be very strict Jewish. My children would not be Jewish because they have to be born to a Jewish mother. While Christianity is based on beliefs, traditional Judaism emphasizes particular practices, such as keeping kosher by avoiding certain foods like pork. So you can be a good Jewish person just by following the practices. In Christianity, of course, you have to believe, you have to follow the belief system of your church. And of course, that's one of the reasons why there are so many denominations of Protestantism, because there are different ways of doing that. Their beliefs are based on different things in the Bible. So that's where the Baptists come in, and that's why there's Methodists and Jehovah's Witnesses and Church of the Nazarene and Church of Christ and Church of God, and just tons of them. My wife's a Presbyterian, so there's lots of them out there. Protestant sect membership is primarily defined by beliefs. One cannot become a member of a church until one publicly accepts the Christian faith as dictated by a specific church and is thus baptized into that church. And my wife's a secretary at her church. She's whatever she is. She's the person that decides whether somebody is properly this or properly that. I forgot Lutherans. So right now they have an argument. There's this one person that wants to leave one church in town and they want to come over to the Presbyterian church. So the question is, are they properly Presbyterian to be able to join the church? So it is my wife and the pastor's job to decide whether that is true or not. Now they don't have very many people in the church. It's a pretty small town. So that can be a problem. They need members, but do they need members who aren't really Presbyterians? And that's the question that they have to. She has to answer that question before they can let this person in, and then they can baptize them in the church. I think they're Lutheran and they want to become a Presbyterian because they're arguing with somebody in the Lutheran church or something. You know how societies go. Everybody's arguing. Christianity has fewer practices and instead places more emphasis on one's private communications with God. Do you pray in the right way? Reflecting the differential emphasis on practices and beliefs, a survey asked Jewish and Protestant participants how important practices and beliefs were for being religious. The results revealed that Jewish participants rated practices as more important than beliefs for being religious, whereas Protestants put greater emphasis on beliefs than practice. It doesn't really matter if you're a Protestant. It really doesn't matter if you practice it. It is what you think in your head. And as far as the Jewish participants were concerned, it has more to do with what you do than what you think. Jewish and Protestant participants were asked to evaluate a story of a married man contemplating having an affair with a woman in his office. All participants viewed extramarital liaisons as immoral, but the Protestants saw thinking about having an affair as sinful as having an affair. In other words, thinking about it was just as bad as doing it. And this was something that came out in the, what was it, 1976 presidential race, Jimmy Carter versus Gerald Ford. Jimmy Carter did a Playboy interview where he said he sins in his mind way too often and he needs to clean that up. And everybody was going, what? What are you talking about? Sinning in your mind. And of course, this is what he was talking about. Protestants, and he's a Baptist, Protestants think that if you think about it, it's as bad as doing it. The Jewish participants limit their moral domain to what people do and not what they think. So the Jewish people, they said, oh, go ahead and think about it all you want. It doesn't really make any difference. You haven't done it, so that makes it okay. Distributing resources. You can distribute resources by the principle of need, which dictates that resources are directed to those who need them the most. Distributing resources, principle of equality, dictates that resources should be shared equally among members of the group. And this is the French Revolution, liberté, égalité, and fraternity. Liberty, equality, and fraternity. This is a famous picture. I'm sorry she got her top torn off, but that is a famous old picture of the French Revolution back in the 18th century. Distributing what nudity has to do with liberty, equality, and fraternity, we're still wondering about that. Distributing resources, principles of equity states that resources are distributed based on an individual's contributions. The more an individual produces, the more resources they receive. And that's kind of like doing piecework. When I was working in the factory back in the 1970s, 1970, 1971, I was working in a automotive pumps and parts factory in Muncie, Indiana. The more parts that I produced, the more money that they gave me. Distributing resources, a social system that rewards individuals on the basis of equity principle, is known as a meritocracy. And meritocracies tend to be more common in individualistic societies. They can lead workers to be highly motivated to work hard because their earnings depend on their efforts. When one worker does well, others tend to do worse. And this is one of the things that happened to me. I was working in the automotive pumps and parts factory. And I was, back in 71, I was, 22 years old. So they gave me a part to run. And by golly, I just zipped right through that stuff. And in 15 minutes, I had made, like $10 worth of stuff. And I'm going, oh, this is great. I can make $40 this hour. And all of a sudden, it just stopped. The line stopped, and so I couldn't make any more parts. I had already made $10, and I sat around for the next half hour, and then right at the end, things started coming a little bit slower. So I was making, I don't know, $12, $14 an hour. And I just barely got that many parts out that hour. And I went to the supervisor and I said, "What the hell? What's going on here?" I said, "What's happening? I could have made $40." And he said, "No, if you do that, then what they're going to do is they're going to they're going to raise the rate. And if you raise the rate, then the people that aren't as fast as you are can't make any money. So we had to slow you down in order for the company not to raise the rate, which, it seems unethical as far as I'm concerned for a lot of different reasons. The company had set the standard, and all I was doing was trying to make as much money as possible. So it was unethical for the line to slow down so I couldn't make more money. But it was equally unethical for the company to raise the rate just because somebody was producing more. That was unethical as well. They should have kept it what it was, and then they wouldn't have. I could have made more money, and everybody would have been okay because everybody would still be able to make their wages, their proper wages. So it wasn't a meritocracy, kind of a meritocracy, but ended up not being that way. They can lead workers to be highly motivated to work hard because their earnings depend on their efforts. When one worker does well, of course, others tend to do worse. And that was part of the problem since I was young and I was energetic. I was able to produce more parts. Not everybody on that line was as young and as energetic as I was. So they would have made less and less money. Meritocratic systems tend to breed competition among the workers, and that's what happened with me. Distributing resources in some organizations, raises are distributed by longevity. It's the way it is in the military. The longer you are in the military, the more money you make. That's the way it is with just about all government service. So if you've been working for the government for 10 years, then you get that much money. This is known as the seniority system. Seniority systems follow the principle of equality because there is no competition between workers. Pay is determined using the same formula for everyone. If you do this job and you've been there for 10 years, you make this much money. It's kind of that way at Divinity College, too. The longer you've been there, the more money you make. So there you go. It is often assumed that merit-based pay is the way to ensure the greatest amount of effort from one's employees. However, Japanese workers have traditionally been among the hardest working in the world. There tends to be a great deal of voluntary overtime, and many workers never take their vacations. And Japanese companies tend to have more seniority-based pay than American organizations. And this is a picture of Japanese workers. They're at their desks, and as you can see, they're all napping. He's napping, and he's napping. Why? Because they want to work, even though they're tired and want to slow down. They would rather sleep at their desk than miss a minute of work. Social scientists have developed various economic games to measure people's sense of fairness. In the coin flip scenario, you are given $100 that has been given to you instead of another person by means of a coin flip. You can give the other person any portion of the $100, but they will never know who you are. So the question is, what do you do? So there's $100, and somebody flips a coin and you win. So you get $100, the other guy's got nothing. So how do you do that? So do you give them anything at all? They don't know who you are. They don't know that they're missing out on any money at all. So do you give them any portion of the $100, or do you just keep the $100 yourself? Now this is one of the dilemmas. This is one of the games that they decided we're trying to determine how moral people are. This is known as the dictator game, and there are various outcomes. The economic theory dictates that the rational person will give their invisible partner nothing because they will never know who you are and you don't stand to gain anything from them. They're not going to give you anything. You give them any money at all, and it's not like they're going to give you back some of the money. You're not going to get anything from them. So, as far as business people are concerned, that's what should happen. You should take the whole $100. Curiously, the economic theory almost never happens. People around the world feel that keeping all the money for themselves is not right, and it just seems fair to give the other person some money. The most common decision that people make is a 50-50 split. Really? Is that what happens? And the answer is yes. Last Monday, I went to the corner cafe and I had lunch. It was beef stew. It was pretty good. And when I was going up to the counter to pay my bill, turned out that the card reader didn't work, so everybody had to pay in cash. Well, I had cash, that was okay. So I paid with a $20 bill, and my bill was $11. And I told the cashier, "Look, just keep the other $9 for people that don't have for people that don't have any cash," because I knew they were going to come in. You see them all the time. All they do is pay with their card, and I knew that they were going to run into things where somebody wanted a bottle of pop, they couldn't get it because they didn't have the cash. So I told her, just keep the change and apply it to somebody that doesn't have any have any cash. So I went back today and I said, "Well, what happened to my $9?" And she said, "Oh, I forgot all about that. Yeah, this old farmer came in and he was trying to buy a sandwich, and all he had was his car. So I applied your $9 to that, and he was able to get his sandwich and his bottle of pop. So it worked out. It worked out well. But I mean, doesn't know who I am. She knows that I gave her $9, but she doesn't know who I am. And I'm sure that the farmer's never gonna, come to my house and give me my $9 back. But that just seemed fair to me. And I was worried about. I didn't. I was worried about people not getting what they needed at the store. I was afraid, somebody'd come in and say, "Man, come on, give me some cigarettes, dude. Oh, I don't have any cash. Can you just give them to me?" Yeah, that kind of a deal. I was afraid they'd spend it on alcohol or whatever. Oh, I went the wrong direction. Sorry. Okay, so business people, those jerks that are in the English or the business department, they think that the person that gets the coin flip should just keep the whole $100, and that's what they predicted. This may be one of the reasons why they have such a difficult time predicting what's going to happen in the economy. Maybe people aren't as greedy as they think they should be. Sorry, my dogs. When economists found that even Western college students were making irrational decisions in the dictator game by giving away money that would not benefit them, they sought an explanation. This did not fit any economic models that they had developed up to this point. These are supposed to be business people. You're supposed to be greedy. A surprise to everyone, people in the United States averaged the highest amount of money to the invisible partner in the dictator game, $47. Factors that dictated the concept of fairness included the amount of calories negotiated at market for food and being a member of a world religion, Christianity and Islam, where God observes one's fairness. So you figure it's karma, dude. If I give them this, then it's going to come back to me tenfold or whatever it is. I don't know. Anyway, this is a picture of God watching somebody pee into the ocean, and it doesn't look happy, does he? Okay. Another game is the public goods game. A group of 4 people are given $10 each. If the individuals donate all their money into a common pool, they are all rewarded with 1.6 times the pot, or $64, and each person gets $16 back. However, if one person holds their $10 out, the pot only ends up at $48, and they will each get $12. The free rider now has $22. This is the public goods game. Okay. Now this is everybody competing against everybody else. It's not just a coin flip where one guy gets $100 and the other guy gets nothing. This is everybody having to cooperate in order for everybody to make money. As the number of rounds increased, the researchers found that the group made less and less money because the temptation to be a free rider was just too great. Because of this, the researchers decided to add a new factor to the game. Okay, so they're making less and less money, and pretty soon nobody's going to be making any money at all. So they decided to put in a punishment. A player could now pay $1 of their own money and have one of the free riders forfeit $3. The players seemed perfectly willing to pay their own money to get another player punished. The researchers found that with the punishment rule, cooperation increased quite dramatically and remained stable across time. Researchers proposed that a key factor that allowed human cooperation to evolve was people's willingness to engage in this kind of altruistic punishment. By feeling motivated to punish those who weren't cooperating, people were able to ensure that group members didn't free ride, which allowed humans to develop norms for cooperation and for large societies to flourish, because there wasn't anybody that was a free rider. And of course, she's getting punished for doing something to him. He's throwing her on the sand. Don't worry, she's not going to be hurt. Well, maybe she is. When the public's good game was played around the world, altruistic punishment was practiced. However, in addition to the tendency for altruistic punishment, in many societies, people showed strong tendencies for what researchers called antisocial punishment. Now we're getting into pathology, okay? So all of these people are putting their money in, and the free riders, of course, they were being punished, and then they started adhering to the group behavior. So everybody was still making money. But one of the things that we noticed when we're playing this game was some people wanted to punish people even if they didn't do anything wrong. And that they referred to as antisocial punishment. The researchers found that some people were willing to pay their own money to punish another player, even if that player was cooperating. And this, of course, was the antisocial punishment. The motivation of this antisocial punishment seemed to be largely a function of revenge, in which people would punish a player who had punished them on a previous round. So somebody is a free rider, so somebody wants to punish them. They get punished on one round, then they punish the person who punished them as revenge. So this was a revenge factor, this antisocial punishment. Although this tendency for antisocial punishment was negligible in weird societies, Western, high economic, in the Western world, in other societies this behavior predominated. Antisocial punishment predominates in Oman more than any other country. Oman is a country that's just south of Saudi Arabia on the Arabian Peninsula. Antisocial punishment predominates in Greece as the second highest level measured. Now, Greece over the last 10 or 15 years has suffered some really interesting economic setbacks. Antisocial punishment predominates in Saudi Arabia as the third highest level measured. Now, there's 3 countries on the Arabian Peninsula. One of them is at civil war, and I can't think of the third one. But one of them is Saudi Arabia, the other one is Oman, and the other one is something else. Whoops, going the wrong way. Antisocial punishment predominates in Russia as the 4th highest level measured. In Russia is number 4. The notion that punishment promotes cooperation holds true only in societies characterized by norms for civic cooperation and high levels of trust. Antisocial punishment was entirely unexpected by the researchers who first discovered it, but it appears to be quite commonplace in many cultures, and it remains somewhat puzzling to social scientists. as weird as that is. Why in the world are they doing this? Why are they seeking revenge for something that either has happened once? You were bad, and now you need to be punished, and this may have something to do with Donald Trump. I hate to pick on former President Trump, but not really. One of the things he wants to happen is he wants all the Republicans who voted to impeach him not to be reelected. Why? He did something wrong, and that's why he was being impeached. So why is he seeking revenge? And the answer is antisocial punishment. The researchers' data shows that societies with weaker norms for civic cooperation and a weaker rule of law engaged in more antisocial punishment in public goods games. Other researchers argue that antisocial punishment can be adaptive in contexts where the rule of law is insufficient. So it's telling you that you need to put in better laws. In dealing with a system that can't always be trusted to function, people come up with alternative ways to ensure that their needs are met. In Brazil, there is a complex societal strategy termed Getimbo, by which people manipulate or dodge the official rules to achieve things. This is a picture of people taking a test in Brazil. And as you can see, they all have to wear these strange head things so that they won't look from side to side to see what the answer is. As strange as that is. Real-life example of these weaker norms for civic cooperation can be seen in the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Now, you may not remember Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. About 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it was really popular. It was a deal where you asked them the questions. They got 4 choices for answers. If they didn't know the answer, they could ask the audience. They could call a friend on the phone. Anyway, they had these lifelines. So as they're marching their way up to $1 million, they have to answer a select group of questions. And of course, they can stop at any point and just take the $50,000 or $100,000 or $200,000. But through the whole thing, they can ask the audience or they can call somebody on the telephone. The show was originally created in England. Contestants were able to use a lifeline, and they could poll the studio audience for help in answering a difficult question. Now, normally, of course, they want to see this guy make his $1 million, so they give him the right answer. When Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was introduced in Russia, the contestants quickly found out that they couldn't trust the audience. Frequently, the audience members would deliberately choose the wrong answer in an apparent effort to mislead the contestants. In England, this didn't happen. In the United States, it didn't happen. But in Russia, you couldn't trust the audience to give you the right answer. Not unlike the public goods game, many members of the Russian audience seemed to be more motivated to sabotage the play of contestants than to help them. As the Brafman 2009 brothers have said, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russians became suspicious of those who were trying to profit off the hard work of others. Norms of civic cooperation remain relatively low in Russia and many other societies around the world, which makes it more difficult for governments to band citizens together in cooperative ventures. This is a member of a band in Russia. The name of the band is Pussy Riot. They are a bunch of women who are trying to change the way people in Russia do things. They're trying to change the government. They want the government to be more moral. And for the longest time, they wore masks so nobody could identify them. So this is a free. This was a free concert they were giving. It's on Red Square. You can see St. Basil's behind them. Anyway, they were up there. They were standing on a bus, on a painted bus, and they were doing all the singing. So for the longest time, nobody knew who they were. This is a picture. This is France and Croatia, and this in Russia. This was the World Cup, and this is a member of Pussy Riot coming out and to make a statement. She was dressed as a guard, and of course, interesting group. You can listen to the music. I was going to play a song. I think I was going to play a song, but if I do that, then um, I, I will go against copyright laws. So for the longest time, nobody knew who they were. Of course, people know who that this lady is, and she was arrested and put in jail for a couple of years. And people all over the world wanted them to, come on, free the ladies. But of course, the Russians don't put up with that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I just thought that was kind of interesting. So Russia does have a moral problem, and we've discussed Russia before. But you know, you want to be a millionaire, so they give you the wrong answer. That's just kind of intense, if you ask me. Okay, that's the end of the chapter. Next time we'll talk about something even more fun, I'm sure. Talk to you next week. I think, yes.